Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing another foundation review video. We are going to be taking a look at the Lisa Eldridge The Foundation. I have mine in shade Light 5, which is described as light with neutral undertone. If you have been curious to hear my thoughts and opinions on this foundation after having it for almost 5 months and being able to test it and wear it and try some different things, stay tuned and let's jump right into this review. For more information on how I like to apply this foundation, shades, all that details, I will have timestamps of everything down below so you can jump around, skip to different parts, take notes if you want to. And then also all the products I have on will be listed in the description box down below. So a quick overview on the foundation. This foundation comes in 40 different shades and there is such a lovely array and nuance within the different undertones available. Let me pull up my notes. You get 30 ml or 1 fluid ounce of product. This retails for 44 Great British pounds or $61 USD, which roughly breaks down to about $75 Canadian, which you could further break down into about $2.50 per ml of product, which means it's a pricey foundation. It's gonna be more of a splurge. Let's look at the claims and I'll give you initial thoughts on if I agree with these claims. It has an adjustable finish / coverage. Completely agree. I find that you can build it from very sheer, almost like a skin tint, up to a medium bordering full coverage. Finish really dependent on what you apply under it. I feel like on its own, it wants to be a more satin to satin matte finish foundation. If you want it to be a full matte, you can use a more mattifying base, or you can add something glowy to it to make it a little bit more luminous. When we're looking at the shade range, we will cover more of it in detail later on. If you are going to try this foundation, the best thing I feel like anyone can do is if you can get your hands on the little blister pack or sample pack, which includes 4 different shades, that is one of the best things you can do. Because for me, when I was looking at the initial kind of shade range, I was thinking that I was going to be, you know, maybe a shade 2 or a shade 1 because I'm normally one of the lightest shades in other foundation ranges. But Lisa said, just because you're the lightest or a certain number in one brand does not mean you will be that same shade or same number in her brand, which that could not be more accurate. For me, I am the 5th shade in the range, which is Light 5, which is light with a neutral undertone. I almost did not even pick up the shade matching card and numbered Light 2 because I was like, I'm never gonna be that dark. That is just not my range. Another little point I want to add to this, which is something I've not added to another foundation, but for me, this is something so crucial to this foundation because one, I had the access available to me via my email because of the receipts, and it's the dates in particular that correspond with different monumental kind of events for this foundation. So the first date I have is October 19th, which is when I received my fall winter 2021 release from Lisa Eldridge, and I got the first sample card in shade Light 1, and that night I had a birthday party to attend and I wore shade Light 4. That you can see a little update on the foundation and thoughts on those lipsticks in a video. If I remember, I'll put it in the cards, but it will be in the description box for sure. We have October 20th. That night I ordered cards shade Light 1, Light 2, Light 3. And then on November 10th is when I received my bottle that I have now, which is in shade Light 5. We have a few other kind of like periods of time from mid-November until beginning of January. I was on vacation. I normally live here in Toronto, Canada, where it's cold most of the time, in my opinion. And then I was visiting my family in Virginia, which is south. Before going on that trip, this foundation was like holy grail. It was just so perfect. It looked perfect on the skin once I figured out the application. So when I was preparing for my trip, I packed this in my Laura Geller Baked Balance and Brighten foundation because if I want a powder foundation, I had it. If I want a liquid one, I had it. I don't know if it was just something different with the climate, the different levels of humidity within my parents' house. This foundation looked atrocious. It looked like a kind of mottled layer on top of my skin. It just, no matter what I used under it, I even bought a different moisturizer while I was down there. I tried some different sunscreens. This foundation just, it never meshed with my skin. Come home, back in Toronto, back to the climate in my home, and try this foundation again. It was perfect again. So this has performed the same way it did pre-vacation since returning back home, and it's good again. I don't know what was going on when I was at my parents', but this did not wear so well. So to get started with our foundation application, I'm just giving it a shake because I like to shake off my foundations. And as you already know, we are testing out Lisa Eldridge's The Foundation. I have shade Light 5, which is light with a neutral undertone. Lisa Eldridge recommends applying with a flat foundation brush. I don't love the standard paddle brush. I can't seem to find a basic, like, classic paddle shape, but I do have a kind of oversized one. This is from It Cosmetics, their collection with Ulta, and then I have the MAC 191, which is more of a square tipped brush. I really love using this It for Ulta one, and I just like to work it on the brush, make sure my product is distributed, and then I like to start in the center portion of my face and blend out. I am going to take this under my eyes because I love using this foundation as a concealer. I find this foundation doesn't spread as far as I would like it to. Now, take in mind, this is a fluffier brush, so it does absorb a bit of product, but it gives me the finish that I like best. And this brush is just really lovely. So in the US, you can get these brushes at Ulta, but here in Canada, we can't get them. And now that travel is a thing again, if you go to the US, definitely check out the It for Ulta brushes at Ulta. They're really, really nice. And they're a decent price point. So, like, I think this brush is around like the $25 mark. Being able to take this brush and kind of pat it in, I can build up coverage where I want it after I have my initial layer on, which I really like. Now that I have a layer of foundation all over, I'm going to take my brush. This is an It Cosmetics Heavenly Luxe number 7. You could use this to apply your foundation. I like using it clean to just go through, smooth everything out. I find a lot of times whenever you're applying a liquid foundation, this is something I always do. It normally gets edited out just because it's a redundant step that not everyone's gonna take. But with this foundation, I feel like it is essential because I find with this foundation, it looks its best when I have spread it as far as I can. So for me to get this level of light teetering on a light medium coverage, it takes me about 4 pumps. One pump is going to cover kind of like the side of my nose, under eye, and my chin. And then, so 1, 2, and then it takes me about 2 pumps to cover my forehead because I have a big forehead. And that generally is enough for me. Sometimes I will go in with a 5th pump to spot conceal. This is a foundation. I don't love layering it with other concealers. I mean, you can, a lot of people do. I find it builds so beautifully on itself that it's kind of its own concealer. So for that, I'm going to take 1 more pump, continue with my foundation brush, and I'm just gonna pick up a little bit on the tip of my brush. And I'm gonna use this to pat under my eyes, kind of anywhere I would use to conceal. I'm gonna let this kind of set on and act like my concealer. Normally, I'm not someone who does this like triangular technique, but I find since I'm layering on this foundation on top of itself, doing this technique, it's gonna, 1, give me the coverage I want under my eyes, but it's gonna also cover up where I get the redness that I want to neutralize in my cheeks. Then whatever's left there, take over my nose, and then the tiny bit I have left on my brush, or on the back of my hand, I'm gonna stamp and press over the areas of my forehead. Chin can use a little bit more coverage. Now I'm gonna use my brush I was using for blending. Since this is a dry brush with just residual product it picked up earlier, this is going to help further spread out the product I just applied. I like to do a mix of kind of tapping or stippling over, and then very lightly, I like to buff over. Normally in my foundation reviews, I'm not this detailed about how I apply something. I find though with this formula, the application in conjunction with what's under it makes a huge difference. It's not as easy to work with as I was hoping, but it's a beautiful foundation when you get all your layering products just right. So now I'm gonna grab my little unflattering 10 times magnifying mirror. I don't love how this foundation looks for about the first hour or so that it's on, because it very much looks like makeup on the skin when you're up close. I'm very, very picky with foundation, and for this foundation being the price point that it is, I want perfection. But like, if I hold my mirror from here, so I'm maybe two feet away, my skin looks perfect. If I'm up close, like if my hand's right here, I can see everything on my skin. That does go away within about an hour to 2 hours of wearing. It just needs to kind of warm up and mesh with the natural sebum / oil of your skin. It needs to warm up. It needs to really kind of form with the skin. So I'm gonna finish off with the rest of the makeup. All the products I use will be listed in the description box down below with some links that if you would like to use. I do earn a small commission at no additional cost to you. It just helps keep my channel afloat. But I'm gonna finish off my makeup and I will be right back and we'll finish off with this foundation review. Alrighty, so the rest of the makeup is on, and now I wanna talk about overall performance and wear of this foundation. I find this foundation's wear and performance really depends on what is under it, how you prep your skin, what finish your products have, how long you wait between your skincare and your makeup. For me, this foundation, while it gives me a really beautiful skin enhancing look, I've got to throw some stuff at it to make it look its best. The way I prepped my skin today, which is the best way I found for prepping for this foundation, which is why it's not something I reach for on a day-to-day, because on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to put forth this much effort to getting a good makeup look. So I do all of my skincare, and then I use either the Can Make Mermaid Skin SPF or my Olay Regenerist. Of all the sunscreens I have, those two are the ones that perform the best under this foundation. Then I like to let that completely dry and set up. Like normally I give my sunscreen about 15 to 20 minutes to apply, but it might still have a little bit of tackiness. For this foundation over sunscreen, I find I need to let it feel completely dry to the touch. Any type of stickiness, if it's still there after about 30 minutes, then I need to take a blotting paper, blot that off, and then I need to look at how I'm going to prime my skin on top of my skincare. So the way I like to prime my skin best is I use my Tatcha Liquid Silk Primer only in my T-zone. So forehead, my nose, my sides notes to the fronts of my cheeks, and my chin. For like the sides and the cheekbone area where I can be prone to getting a little bit of dryness, then I'll either use the Lisa Eldridge Elevated Glow or my Chanel LeBlanc. Between these two, I find myself reaching for my Chanel LeBlanc just because this is a better shade for me. It has more of that cool pinky tone, which sits better with my skin, whereas the Lisa Eldridge, I have the lightest shade, which is called Crystal Nebula. For me, it has almost more of like an olivey golden tone that unless I blend it out and make it very, very sheer, I can look a little kind of shadowed almost under the foundation. So I will use this under a foundation to prep, and then once that dries, because this does have a similar film former that the foundation does, once this is fully dried, then I'll use a little tiny bit just right over the high point, so that way I don't get that shadowed effect within the foundation. Once I apply my primers, then I like to let that dry for about another 5 minutes until it's dry to the touch, and then go in with this foundation and make sure I'm applying in very thin layers. If you feel like this foundation sounds high maintenance, it is. It is not for me one that I can throw on and go. For me, the One to Chanel foundation is the easiest, most user-friendly foundation. I can do a lot of skin prep. I can do bare minimum. I can do just a moisturizer if it's at night. I can pump it on my hands, rub it, and spread it out. It's so easy. Even though this gives me a really beautiful finish, if I try to apply it like that, I can look a little patchy, which I don't know. It's just, I feel like I have to throw a lot at the foundation to make it look as good as it can. Something else that's really interesting to me with this foundation is depending on the other makeup. This shade, which is in shade Light 5, which is light with a neutral undertone. For me, I feel like it's a great shade for unifying my more ruddy face with my slightly cooler, more kind of pale body skin. But I find like some videos, like in my bright winter video, this is the foundation I'm wearing in that video, and I felt like I just looked really pale, like almost like the neutral undertone of this almost muted me out too much. That being said, I did not use any type of bronzer or contour, just blush in that video, and that could do a lot because I normally add a little bit just to kind of add a little bit more of a frame or kind of structure to the skin. When I reviewed Lisa Eldridge's fall winter True Velvet collection, I had a birthday party to go to that night, so I wore one of the shades from like the blister sample packet. I wore shade Light 4, which is like, I believe, light with a peachy undertone. I wore that. It wore beautifully that night. Came home, same night I ordered the sample slash blister packs in light 1, light 2, and light medium 1. So that way I had sample cards of shades 1 through 12 to test out. I have notes here on my iPad I can share with you. So I'm gonna be reading what my experiences were with some of the different shades. So the shade I went with is shade Light 5, which is light neutral. Shade Light 2 was a decent match. It had a nice amount of rosiness to it, but it just felt a little too fair for me. It's just, I could make it work on my neck and it was a good match for my body skin, but where my face has more, it looks darker because of the redness it has, the surface redness from my rosacea, just, it made me look almost gray. Shade 4, which was light with a peach undertone, it was very workable. If I applied a nice kind of cooler pinky blush, it would work really well, but where it was more peach, it had a little bit more of a warm yellowy undertone to it, which was very contrasting to the rest of my skin. And where it had more of that yellow undertone, that yellow served as enough as a color correction to really mute out my facial redness, which made me look a little sallow, which I'm not a big fan of. The other shade I really enjoyed is shade Light 7, which is considered a neutral undertone. For me, I found compared to shade 5, it was a pinch darker and had a pinch more rosiness. The shades overall are very impressive. The range has 40 shades, which is wonderful, especially for a new foundation launch. When I was compiling my notes for the video, Lisa mentioned the range of undertones, which is something I want to share with you. So she says there's neutral rose slash red. So as the shade range gets darker, it goes from more of a rosy tone to more of a reddy tone. Neutral golden, rosy slash red, so more on that pink red side versus neutral to pink or neutral to red. True golden, peach slash terracotta, so a little bit more of that orangey yellow tone, and it will fade more into that more orangey red tone as it gets darker. Then you'll have the olive undertones, which is something that she really explained. So Lisa said there is a cool olive, there is a true olive, and there's a warm olive. And I find that really fascinating because when I was still working as a freelance artist, especially when I was doing a lot of bridal makeup, because for bridal, we want to match everything on display, which is what you want to normally do. But with a wedding dress where you have that white or ivory color, it's going to really draw a lot of attention to the décolleté, the shoulders, the arms. And then you throw in some people with fake tan. So you want to make sure everything is a nice match. And sometimes if you have someone with more of an olivey skin tone, finding a match can be really difficult, and then you find yourself having to break out color correctors, mixing mediums. You have to add bits of white in, you'll have to add bits of green in, you'll almost have to add a pinch of like a blue if it's too of a yellow foundation to cool it down and give it slightly more of a muted gray green cast. There's a lot of mixing, a lot of color theory. So with Lisa Eldridge's range, having 40 shades, having those different nuances of what olive is and what olive can be is wonderful. Let's take a look at the pros and cons of Lisa Eldridge's The Foundation. For pros, it's lightweight, it's skin light, it's buildable, and it's adjustable, which means it's a truly customizable foundation. And the shade range, it's a newer range, but you have 40 shades with so much attention and an eye for detail in curating the different undertones, which is wonderful. Something that's kind of in the middle, it's not a pro, it's not a con, is the application takes trial and error on its own to figure out what's going to work best for you and to get the look that you're going for, and the initial wear. When the foundation first goes on, if you're not careful to take like a buffing foundation brush and smooth over areas of concern, or a dry sponge, or just something to kind of remove any excess, I find it's going to settle a little bit in any kind of crevices or valleys in the face or pores. And then if you do take the time to smooth out, it could still look a little for the first 30 minutes to an hour. After that hour, when the foundation starts to kind of mix with the sebum or oil of the skin, then it starts to take on a really beautiful look, and I find then it wears beautifully, and it is one of the most beautiful foundations in the way it wears off. And then for me, the biggest con is there's a lot of trial and error. You have to have some days where you're gonna have some not so great foundation days to really get a foundation that looks as beautiful and as seamless and as flawless as you want it to. For me, it's not one of those foundations that you can take out of the box, throw it on like you would a normal foundation, and have a great day. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. If everything lines up, your base and prep has had enough time to set and fully dry, your application is just right, you're using just the right amount of product, then it's really beautiful. For me, I got very lucky on the first day when I used the blister pack in shade 4. I had a really beautiful foundation day. Other days, like when I was on my vacation, my skin just wasn't having this, and the foundation just always looked so heavy and dry and cracky on my skin. If you've tried this foundation and you've had a different experience than I have, I would love to know. If you have any tips that you feel like would make the application or wear better for me, let me know as well. I want to know all of your thoughts and feelings. So if you found this video enjoyable, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and share this video with a friend that you think might find it enjoyable. I will see you all in the next video. Bye, y'all.